one.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the African Safari 101, your ultimate guide to adventure. Uh, Today, the travel club is not meeting in person. We are meeting in person tomorrow, but today we're meeting virtually, and we're going to record this for those of you that aren't able to attend in person. For this month, for the Explore the Month, excuse me, Explore the World Travel Club in Sun City, Arizona, my agency Pro Travel has invited our guest expert speaker, Chris Webster from Kensington Tours. He's going to give us a great overview of the African safari, some of Kensington's services. They're one of the top safari providers in the world. I've worked with them for many years, for over a decade. And any trip I send any of my clients with Kensington is always white glove, top notch. And then after the presentation, we will stop and have a Q&A session. That'll be in a separate section. But Chris, thank you so much for having us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jeanette. This is a really special opportunity for me to hop in here and just tell you a little bit about African safaris. Um, a little bit about me. I've been working in this space for a little bit over a decade, been selling safaris for about 4 or 5 years now. I've been fortunate enough to go to Africa several times, several different countries, a lot of different experiences. It's really the kind of trip that is so exciting on paper, but when you go and actually get a chance to do it, it changes your life. It's nothing short of that. So I am going to kick off this presentation here and just talk to you a little bit about the differences in safari regions and what Kensington can provide for you when you're on a safari. So again, this is just a slide about me, a little more of a decade in the industry. I specialize in journeys to East, West, and Southern Africa. So basically anywhere sub-Saharan, I'm your guy. And really, what I do is I combine my firsthand knowledge of the regions with our trusted local partners, our contacts, our guides in the area to really produce a customized adventure for anything that you're looking for. So, just a little bit here about Kensington and the difference that we can provide for a travel experience. Oh, my slides are taking a little longer to load. So our itineraries are designed by experts. Everyone in our sphere, we call ourselves destination experts. So I focus on sub-Saharan Africa. A colleague might focus on the Baltic nations. Someone else focuses on Australia, New Zealand. So we're really honed in on the specific areas that we will plan trips for, which allows us to really curate our knowledge. All of our journeys begin with a conversation. So we don't just take, if you want to go to 10 days for South Africa, we don't just pump out an itinerary for that. We talk with you and try to understand, what is your travel style? What are the hotels that you like? What are you looking for? What is the primary goal of the trip? And that allows us to curate and provide personalized trips, no matter what the goal might be. We also have 24/7 service. We have people on the ground here. We have people on the ground in your location. So no matter what you need or where you are, someone is always there to provide service and give you the answers that you're looking for. When it comes to Africa specifically, there's a couple of things I want to highlight in where our destination experts can really thrive. Understanding seasonality for Africa is a really big one. There's always different environmental factors that are happening in different regions. That affects what the animals are doing, that affects where they're going to be, what you're going to see. And having a destination expert that's well versed in that goes such a long way towards maximizing your experience. These are also really, really massive regions in geographical space. I'll have clients come to me and ask for 7 different things that would really take a month when they have about 5 days. And if they were to just take that trip without talking to me, it would be difficult for them to enjoy themselves while trying to tick off all the bucket lists. So understanding what's possible is really important. There's also such a range of accommodations on Safari. You get everything from pretty basic tents all the way to sprawling 7-star suites and villas. So understanding what you're looking for and what your budget will accommodate is something that we can really help you out with. And then obviously, the main attraction, it's all about the wildlife on Safari. And we work with only the best local guides, people that are certified, trained, have decades of experience, and they can bring those stories to life much more than you could ever find on a group tour. So we'll start a little bit with South Africa. South Africa, it's the sixth most populous country in Africa, highest GDP. So the development there and the tourism infrastructure is really, really at a high level, much more so than almost anywhere else on the continent. For that reason, for a lot of people, for a lot of first timers, I find that it's a nice way to go because it's very easy to access the game reserves there. The roads are of great quality, the lodges are an exceptional quality. So it's a really nice place to sort of dip your toes into the world of safari. From the US, there are direct flights to Johannesburg and to Cape Town from a couple of different cities, mostly on the eastern seaboard. I know there's a United flight out of Newark. JFK has some options. There's flights from Atlanta. So you have a couple of different options to get over to South Africa. And then there's also flights that go through Europe and the Middle East as well. Kruger National Park, a lot of you have probably heard of this one. It's maybe the world's most famous, over 7,500 square miles. And there's quite a lot of private reserves that share unfenced borders with Kruger Park. And these are ones that we actually really prefer to use because Kruger is publicly accessible. Anyone can go in. You can see a ton of vehicles there in the high season. But on the private reserves, only people who are staying at lodges in the private reserves are allowed to explore those. So you get a much more exclusive experience when you're staying at one of these. A couple of examples of those, which you might have heard, Sabi Sands, probably the most famous one. You also have Timbavati, Thorny Bush, Manuletti. These are just a couple. I mean, there's so many options out there to explore. Some understandings of when to go to South Africa. It's an interesting one. So peak season for safari is May to October, kind of those summer, early fall months. That's the dry season. So the game viewing is at its easiest. It's easy to spot all the animals in the bush. It's dry. The temperatures are very nice. But for Cape Town, it's kind of flipped. For Cape Town, the peak season is sort of October to April because that's there over their summer period because they're in the southern hemisphere. So that's when they get the nicest weather, the warmest temperatures, the beach life is amazing. So really kind of if you want to do a combination of those, the best times are sort of those shoulder seasons. So kind of, March to May or even sort of September, October. That's when you're getting really nice weather in both of those places. Makes for a really well-rounded experience. South Africa is visa-free for North American travelers. They're working on rolling out an ETA. That's not coming for a couple of months, and it might be a couple of more. Things tend to work a little bit slow over there. There's no mandatory vaccinations for South Africa, which is really nice. Anti-malarial medication is recommended for most of the parks. The incidence rate is really, really low, especially if you're going in the dry season, but it's always worth talking with your doctor about. A couple of quick regions and sort of things that I do want to highlight for South Africa, which you might have heard of. One of these would be the Cape Winelands. So these are about an hour to an hour and a half outside of Cape Town. If anyone is into wine in any respect, these are really a must to visit. You can do it on a day trip from Cape Town, but I love spending a night or two in this area. I was just down there in March. My fiance and I started our trip there, and it couldn't have been a better idea. It's so peaceful. You have this amazing mountain ranges, beautiful vineyards, and so many different places to stop in. Great cuisine. You can take a wine tram. You can do a private guided tour. You can pick the varietals that you love, and they'll hand select the farms to go to. So it's really an incredible place. A lot of people also ask about Victoria Falls, and there's sometimes some confusion as to where exactly the falls are. So they're not in South Africa proper. They're up on the border of Zimbabwe and Zambia. So it's probably about a 2-hour flight north from Cape Town. You can get flights here from Cape Town, Johannesburg, Nairobi, if you want to combine it with a visit to East Africa. And you can also, in the summertime, get flights directly from the Kruger National Park into Victoria Falls. So that's super handy. There's a ton of different hotels and lodges around this area. You can get a cute little boutique hotel in town. You can get like more of a safari style lodge up on the Zambezi River. So really, there's tons of fits depending on what you're looking for. You can get a visa on arrival for US citizens. I believe it's about $30 per person, so that's nice and easy. And 2 to 3 nights here is perfect. You want to do a tour of the falls, maybe half a day. You want to do a sunset cruise on the Zambezi River. That's an absolute highlight. And then there's a lot of other different sort of activities, cultural things that you can mix in here, all just depending on your interests. But Victoria Falls is a very, very popular add-on. I think the key thing to highlight is that if you want to go during the peak flow of the river, so when the falls are really, really booming, that's between December and May. I would say March to May is the best time because December and January, you're going to be getting a lot of rain. It's quite humid. So March to May is the peak flow. In the summertime and the fall, it's still beautiful. I mean, it's an amazing sight, a massive gorge, and still all those things to do. But the flow of the river does get to be quite a bit lower. So you're seeing more of the rock and not quite as much of the water. Just a couple of my favorite accommodations in Southern Africa. I always like to highlight these because we work with such a diverse portfolio, but our focus is more on the upper level of things. And I love when we can use some of these really, really world-class properties. So these are just a couple of examples. Janette and I were talking a little bit about the Singita brand, which is my very favorite in all of Africa, and that's a very high bar to clear. They have a number of lodges in Southern and Eastern Africa. That one, Lubombo, is built up on a cliff. It's inspired by Eagle's Nest overlooking a river. So, I mean, if you're looking for something to really, really blow a trip out of the water, Singita would be the one. But there's so many different options. We have Sabi Sabi Earth Lodge down there. This was built by an architect. It was sort of her life's work. Very, very cool place. Babbelenstoren in the Cape Winelands, sort of an old Cape Dutch farm kind of style. So they have massive sprawling gardens. They have beautiful wine. They have two or three wonderful restaurants. I mean, like this is the number one place to go in the winelands. And then Cape Town, you obviously have a ton of hotels there. Cape Town is a beautiful city, very cosmopolitan, tons of amazing restaurants. The one and only I stayed at in March, they had recently done a full renovation. It's right on the Victoria and Alfred waterfront area, which is our number one neighborhood. It's very safe, it's walkable, even at night. It's a wonderful place to stay. And the one and only is one of my favorite choices there. And then I'd like to highlight one or two itineraries that Kensington likes to use. And on our itineraries, you can see a couple if you go on our website. These are really meant to be templates, they're jumping off points. Everything that we do is customized. Again, so we work with you to build the exact trip that you're looking for based on your style, your budget, your specifications. But these templates are a good sort of way to get the gears turning in your head and figure out how to make this all work. So one of the classic ones, this is one of our best sellers in Southern Africa, is the Cape Kruger and Vic Falls. So this ticks all those boxes. You get down to Cape Town for a couple of days. You go on the cable car above Table Mountain. You do the Cape Peninsula full day drive, which is my favorite tour in the city by mile. This allows you to explore a lot of the areas along the coast, including a visit to Boulders Beach, where you get the rare African penguin colonies. There's only two or three, and the biggest one is here. This this is a fan favorite. Everyone loves this one. Um, After Cape Town, you get to go up to Kruger and spend a couple of days on safari. So twice daily game drives, amazing food, tons of wildlife opportunities. And then after that, you pop right over to Victoria Falls for the coda to the trip. So 2 or 3 nights there, check out the falls, do the Zambezi cruise. This one is really like this is a bestseller because it just ticks all the boxes, especially if it's your first time to the region. Another one that I really love, and this is geared more towards those food and wine aficionados, is our South Africa culture and cuisine itinerary. So this one again, this starts in Cape Town with more food focused tours. So you're doing a walking food tour with a local chef, checking out all the iconic dishes of the region. We always book a couple of our favorite restaurants in the city for you. Then you head out to the winelands. You do a full day checking out some of the best vineyards in the region. Trying some varietals that maybe you haven't before, going down doing some cellar tours, things of that nature. And then heading out and finishing on safari on the Sabi Sands Private Reserve. Sabi Sands is probably the world's most famous private reserve. It's really well known for its leopard populations. This is maybe the best place in the world to see leopard. On my trip there, we saw two different leopards within 2 days, and I had never seen a leopard before on my four previous safaris. So this one's hard to beat. And this is definitely on the higher end of the scale. This is a luxury sort of itinerary, but we can always customize and tweak the accommodations based on whatever you're looking for. And just a handful of some of my favorite add-on experiences for Southern Africa, because there's so many. Again, the wine lands, there's so many ways to explore that. And we can really go, ultra exclusive, ultra detailed with this. So, for someone who's really into that, we can do cellar tours. We can meet, the next generation of wine producers in the area. You can go on a horseback or on an e-bike ride through some of the vineyards. So there's so many ways to explore that region. For people who love the penguins, and quite a lot of people love the penguins, we can do a paddling with penguins kind of thing. So instead of just coming down and checking them out on the beach, you can get a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard and head out into the water. And sort of it gives you this other vantage point of the penguins. You can see them swimming and diving around, and it's just a really cool way to explore that area. And then on safari, there's quite a few properties in Southern Africa that provide these exclusive treehouse builds. So you book it in advance for a night. You get a two-way radio. The staff drop you off with a bunch of food and a bunch of drinks, and they personalize it for exactly what your tastes are. And you spend a night under the stars. And it's just this really exclusive, completely unforgettable experience that I recommend to everyone. So that's sort of Southern Africa in a nutshell. And I think the main takeaway is that it's a very well-rounded experience in Southern Africa. You have the wildlife, you have the wine, you have the cities, the restaurants, you have Victoria Falls. There's kind of something for everyone. Eastern Africa, the focus here is really on the wildlife. That's what it's for. You have some cool cultural experiences. Nairobi and Kigali have some interesting city things that you can do there, but really people go here for the animals. This is the point. When we talk about East Africa in safari terms, usually we're looking at, four countries for safari. That's Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. And then you have island destinations like Zanzibar, which is part of Tanzania, a very, very popular thing to combine with Tanzania safari itineraries. And the Seychelles, if you're looking for something a little more far-flung, a little more idyllic, picture postcard romantic, the Seychelles is one of the best. Nairobi is the largest airport for this region in Kenya, and it's the only one with a direct flight from the US. That goes from JFK, it's on Kenya Airways. There's talks about opening up a couple more direct routes, but for the moment, that's the only one. Otherwise, you have to go usually through Europe or again the Middle East, the Gulf region, in order to get down there. And there's lots of options. Some of the top parks here you've probably heard of: the Serengeti in Tanzania, the Masai Mara in Kenya, which is actually just the northern part of the Serengeti. It's one big park. And then in Rwanda, you have Volcanoes National Park. In Uganda, you have the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest. These are both, those latter two are the two places where you can see mountain gorillas. So this is the only part of the world that the mountain gorillas live. They're not kept in captivity. This is the only place you can see them. They do also live in some forests in the Congo. We're not really selling trips to the Congo at this time, mostly due to operational sort of concerns there. But Rwanda and Uganda are incredible places, extremely safe, wonderful people. My very first time in Africa was to do the gorilla trek in Rwanda, and it was an experience that I'm not sure if I can ever match. I might have peaked very early. Oh, and then just a note on the Great Migration. This takes place across the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. Many people have heard about this, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later on, but this is a huge attraction for this area. So seasonality here, the peak season for East Africa is sort of those summer and early fall months, June to October, similar to safari in South Africa, where this is the dry season. So you're not getting much rain, so it's very easy to be out in the bush. The vehicles can go pretty much wherever they want. Temperatures are really nice. You're probably looking at high 70s during the daytime, and then about mid 50s in the evening, so it's quite comfortable. Um, the shoulder season is November to February. I really like safaris at this time because you're seeing less people in the parks, you're paying lower rates, and it's a really nice time to go. It's also a little bit greener, so even though it might be harder to see some of the animals in the brush, it's a very healthy landscape, and the animals are very healthy. March and April, we call it the green season. There tends to be a fair amount of rain at this time, so it's kind of the only time that I might not recommend going. Although my first time was in April, and we had a lovely time. We only got some rain in the evenings, so it's not impossible to go then, and you're getting a big discount at the lodges, but it's just something to keep in mind. An electronic visa is required for every country here. Some of them you can get on arrival, like Rwanda and Tanzania. Kenya and Uganda, you do need to get them before going, but it's a pretty simple process. If you're going to Uganda, you do require the yellow fever vaccination. Travelers over the age of 60 can get by with a doctor's note just saying it's not recommended. This is quite common for travelers over the age of 60. Many doctors will recommend that they not get the yellow fever vaccine. So if you have that note from your doctor, then that's entry for you, no problem. It's also required for Kenya if you're combining that with other countries. So if you're doing like a Kenya-Tanzania trip or a Kenya-Rwanda trip, you'll need the yellow fever vaccination or that equivalent doctor's note as well. Anti-malarial medication is recommended. Again, in many of these parks, and depending on the time of year, the incidence rate is quite low, but it's always something that's worth chatting with your doctor about and just making sure that you're well covered. US dollars widely accepted here and often actually preferred for tipping purposes. So it's quite rare that you would need to exchange your money or take out local currency for this. Anywhere, like any of the major cities, restaurants, shops will use major credit cards, so no problem there. And then US dollars for tipping your guides and your staff is actually preferred in most cases. One thing I would really like to highlight here is the opportunity to do private game drives. So in South Africa, you can book a private vehicle, but it's pretty hard to get. Most of the time, you're sharing your game drives with it'll be 8 or 9 people per vehicle with the lodge guide. But in East Africa, there's more flexibility to provide private vehicles. And Kensington actually can give you that opportunity. So we have our own fleet of vehicles and we have our own guides that have been certified, that have worked in the parks for years and years, oftentimes decades. In my opinion, these are the MVPs of any safari trip. Like they have the biggest impact as to what your experience will be like. Their knowledge is incredible. They're extremely personable people. You kind of, I always say you go for the wildlife, but you come back with memories of your guide. They're just tremendous people. So it's something I love to highlight with my clients. The vehicles hold up to 6 people, and they'll really give you an opportunity to do some amazing things. So the Great Migration, I touched on this earlier, takes place all year round, moving through the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. The herds are made up of 1.5 million wildebeest at their peak. So I mean, there's no sight like this in the animal kingdom. It is a really, really tremendous thing. The herds are always on the move all through the year. So really our goal is to line up your camp with the time that you'll be there. If you're here in a certain time of the month or a certain time of the year, we'll put you in the south. Another time of the year, we'll put you in the west. We always try and get you as close as possible to the herds if that's something you're keen on. It's impossible to predict. No one has the calculator of where they're going to be exactly, but we use migration patterns to align that and to maximize your chances. Also, again, a note on gorilla trekking. So East Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, these are the only places where gorilla trekking is possible. What you do is you meet up with your guide and some porters in the morning, form groups of up to 8. They typically base it on sort of your fitness levels and your energies, and they assign you a specific gorilla family. They know all of the gorilla families that live in the forest. Trackers will sort of keep watch on where they are and their movements and where they're going to be. So they always have a really good idea of what path to take to find that family. The treks can be anywhere from about, I would say, 2 to 6 hours, just depending on the positioning of that family. Once you find them, you get to spend an hour in the company of the gorillas. This is not one of the cheaper things to do in Africa. In fact, this is definitely one of the more exclusive experiences, but it is something that you'll simply never forget. I mean, this is maybe one of the top 3 most incredible things I've ever done in any travel experience. And it's just a very, very special thing. So definitely something to have on your radar. One quick note, minimum age is 15 years. So if you're thinking of doing this with your kids, wait until then. You don't want to leave them behind. And again, just a couple of featured accommodations. I won't really touch on these too much because we only have so much time in the meeting, it looks like. But you can just see there's such a range of incredible options in East Africa. Basate Lodge down there in the corner, sort of these beautiful bird's nest villas that are up in the park. Singida has a couple of properties here. And Ngama is another amazing brand. They've just built this one in Amboseli last year. I had the pleasure of visiting in November. The views of Kilimanjaro right from your front porch are jaw-dropping. I mean, it's tremendous. So lots of different price points and options and styles that we can explore here. And then again, so just one or two itineraries for East Africa that I really love. And again, these are just templates. These are just jumping off points. So for people who want to do that classic, we want to do a safari and we want to do the gorillas. How do we do it together? Our Rwanda gorillas and Serengeti safari itinerary is a great one. So this one starts in Rwanda. And I kind of like doing the gorilla trek first because I think for a lot of people, that'll be on your brain the whole time if you're doing it at the end and you might not be immersed in where you are. So you do the gorilla trek first, get that out of the way, and then we can fly you from there right into the Serengeti. So you don't have to, stop somewhere else. You don't have to spend a couple of nights in transit. You can take it from Kigali right into the Serengeti Park, which is amazing. And then you do a couple of days on safari in the Serengeti. You pop over to the Ngorongoro crater, which is a tremendous site. And you do a full day game drive on the floor of the crater, which is like 100 miles wide. Really, really incredible place. And then you pop home from there. So this is the perfect kind of wildlife combo tour. And then many of you have probably heard about Giraffe Manor. I would wager quite a bit that it's been on somebody's radar. Very well-known property. It's all over Instagram. It's all over social media. And when you see a picture like this one, you can imagine why. An extremely popular request. We have been getting a ton of these, and it seems like more and more all the time. Uh, a very special place, but very, very hard to book. In fact, during the summertime, if you want to stay here, you really need to start looking about a year out, especially if your dates aren't very flexible, because there's only about 10 or 11 rooms total on the property, and they book up extremely fast. So just something to put on your radar, but we do have an itinerary that includes this. So this is our luxury Kenya safari with Giraffe Manor. We keep this very, very high level all the way through. Excellent five-star hotels, flying from one place to another so you're not wasting any time in transit. You start by popping over to Amboseli, which is the park that you have the super tusker elephants. So elephants whose tusks are more than 100 pounds each. I got to meet one last November, and it was a very, very special sight. I don't think I'll ever see an elephant like that again. And the best place to have views of Mount Kilimanjaro. So if you want to see the mountain, this is the park to go to. It can be very hard otherwise. From there, you fly over to the Masai Mara, do 3 nights in the Mara at a very high-end lodge. Big five sightings, lions, leopards, elephants, giraffes, everything you can think of. And then you finish your journey at the Giraffe Manor. Very special way to cap it off. A couple of my favorite add-ons, hot air balloon rides is a fan favorite. Tons of people ask for these, and they should. It's a very, very special experience. Floating above the park at sunrise while the sun is coming up. The vistas you get of the landscape are unmatched. They're tremendous. And what's really fun is they don't just keep you high up. They sort of will take you high and bring you right down, up eye level with a giraffe, and then you go right back up again. So you really get these varied points of the landscape. If you're staying in the Mara, you can visit Kensington Hall Ulusinon. So this is a project that Kensington partners with a local NGO called AMS. It's the first secondary school for girls in the region, founded in 2019, and only guests of Kensington can go and visit there. So it's a really cool way to, village visits are amazing, but this is a really unique experience that lets you actually build a connection with people there. And then walking safaris, a lot of lodges will offer this. I think it's a really fun way to sort of explore the region on foot. You're looking for smaller game on these kinds of ones, but you learn about a lot about the plants, the traditional uses for them, the medicinal uses. Your knowledge of the land just grows so much from doing something like this. And then just a couple of insider secrets and tips from my end. Maximizing the shoulder season is great. That's, not just going in the summertime because the summertime is great, but it's very busy. You're paying at the highest rates at the lodges. So going in that shoulder season, the off season, you're seeing far less people in the parks. There are far less vehicles around the sightings. You're paying less at the lodges. And the weather almost all the time is just as good. Maybe you get a little rain in the evening, but nothing that affects your game drive. So to me, that's really the time that is great to go. You get a lot of value for the experience. I would also really advise mixing it up. A lot of people think a safari just has to be you're sitting in the 4x4 every day, all day. It's not the case. You can do walking safaris. There are beach destinations. You can stay at lakeside cottages. You can, stay at a conservancy that's up at the top of the mountain and do mountain biking from there. So there's so many different ways to enjoy these regions. Going private when possible is huge. As I'd mentioned, East Africa, you have the opportunity to do private vehicles and private guides. So you really customize your wildlife sightings. If you want to just go look at elephants all day and nothing else, then you can do that. That's something you can't do on a group tour. In South Africa, the private reserves that I'd mentioned a little early on, Sabi Sands, Timbavati, we love using these. They have rules that there's no more than 2 or 3 vehicles per sighting, whereas in the public Kruger, there's no limit. So you really get the sense of wilderness there, which is preserved. And then feel free to customize. I mean, these regions have more and more flights that link parks together. There's ways to combine different parts. So really the only limit is your imagination. Whatever you want to do, a Kensington destination expert can make it happen for you. And then finally, this is just a little bit about connecting. So my details are there. I know that we are going to do a live Q&A session tomorrow, or I guess today by the time you are listening to this when we all meet. So I'll be happy to pop on and answer any questions of yours shortly. But I really appreciate the time that you have all given towards this. It's a really special opportunity for me to chat with you today and to introduce you to the world of safari. So thank you, Janette, for giving me this space. And I look forward to speaking with you all.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for that. I think you need to start my video if you can, Chris.
I can. So I've just gone and done that, but I think we
Okay.
only have maybe 30 seconds left. The meeting might
Okay.
automatically end, so I don't want to rush
Well,
you.
I just want to thank everybody for coming, but especially for Chris. And I look forward to our Q&A tomorrow, which is, will be later today for them. And thank you again, everybody, for, coming to the Travel Club's webinar with Chris and learning more about safaris. If you have any questions about safaris, I'll be glad to get on a conference call with you. We could also loop Chris in, and we could also talk about what your preferences are. I've been doing this for over 20 years, so I'd be happy to help. Thank you so much, Chris, and you